So I don't want to hold our guest speaker up too long tonight. He's a very, very busy man. I'm so excited to see his face again. I'm so happy to have him here.
Sure.
Mr. Jessie Garcia he currently serves as the DC State Director of the League of United Latin American Citizens. You guys may have heard us commonly throw about the term LULAC, which is what that stands for. He's a champion in that field and Hispanic civil rights. LULAC is the oldest and the largest Hispanic civil rights group. I appreciate everything he does. He has tirelessly worked serving the LGBTQ plus community. He's done awesome work under the Obama administration. He's a man, and wait, let me just add, he's a friend of Cecil County. He was instrumental in helping us set up the LULAC chapter a few years ago when we first began that. And this was during the crisis with what was going on at the border. And he gave up his time and stepped in. And I never thanked you for that, Jessie. I thank you for that.
You're very welcome.
So without further ado, Mr. Jessie Garcia.
Thank you so much for inviting me to come speak to you. It means a lot to me when they reached out. Of course, I would definitely come speak to Cecil County. It warms my heart hearing you all go through your reports. I used to do that for 10 years in Dallas, Texas, when I ran my political action committee, the Stonewall Democrats of Dallas. It was a gay democratic organization. We're the biggest and the largest democratic organization in the county because a lot of us were under attack. So we had to volunteer for the Democratic Party and be there to knock on doors, lick envelopes, fundraise for the Dallas County Democratic Party. And we managed to turn every seat that was there elected, every judge. We elected our judges in that county because of Texas law. We switched everything from red to blue within a 6-year period when the demographics started changing in northern Texas. So hearing all these reports brought back so many memories. And I want to thank you for the work that you're doing because it's hard work. But it is so rewarding when you start seeing people that you know get elected to office and you start making that local change and people's lives start getting better. So hats off to all the work that you're doing. It matters and it's important. And just know that you're going to be giving this to the next generation to take on. You're not always going to do it because I was there once. I started off as a gay rights democratic activist growing up in my 20s. And of course, living in Texas, you get everything thrown at you if you're in a marginalized community. During my activism for the gay rights movement, there was a marriage amendment that was being passed. Gay marriage was already illegal in Texas, but Rick Perry, who wanted to get reelected with large numbers, decided to enter something, a constitutional amendment in our state constitution that wasn't needed because gay marriage was already illegal in Texas, but he wanted to enshrine it in the Constitution. So in 2005, he started, going around the state saying, oh, we're going to pass this and this off-year election where we get to submit amendments to the Constitution. And he was just doing it to rev up his base. But in the meantime, by doing that, he was striking a match into bigotry in Texas, to hate on gay people, to divide us, and really making young gay folks question their identity when so much as hatred was being brought up in our state's conversation of gay marriage. The gay rights activists were trying to work really hard to try to defeat this amendment, and at that time, the gay folks, the gay leaders reached out to me and said, "Hey, we need to reach out to our allies in the progressive movement. Can you meet with the Latino community to see if they could rally around us?" So I had a lunch with the national LULAC president who happened to live in Dallas, where I lived, and we had a lunch, and I said, hey, is there any way National LULAC can issue out a statement saying, hey, we're against this resolution, this amendment being introduced? And he says, we really need your help, and it would mean the world to us if you could, lend your support. And then he says, where has the gay community been when we needed your support? We've had families torn apart, taken away. We've had laws being passed, making English only ordinances throughout our Texas cities, laws that won't allow immigrants to rent in certain properties if they're undocumented. So where have the gays been when we've needed that help? And then he's instructed me to say, he basically said, we need you to be with us, not just come ask us for stuff. We need you to educate us also, because we have a whole, group of people in LULAC who have fought the civil rights fight, but they don't really have no inkling or idea about the LGBT struggle. And you need to come and have that honest conversation with us so we could know about your community and the needs and the wants. So he invited me to form a chapter within LULAC to get that conversation going. And that's how I became a LULAC member. In 2005, I went to have lunch with this very important man. Later on in the fall, we lost that election. And when we were looking at the numbers, we noticed that Black and white people overwhelmingly voted for this, but the Hispanics broke even. So the gay rights leader were like, you need to have this keep this conversation going, because 50% of the Latinos who voted to save us, so to save our cause. So that was my marching orders to start getting involved with LULAC. And I've been a LULAC member for the last 15 years. And I've worked to get national resolutions on LGBT issues passed after I've had those honest conversations with all these mainly older folks, because it is a very old organization. When you think of the NAACP being really old and around since the early 1900s, LULAC came up at the same time, right before World War II. And it was formed because people were not getting those rights. We were fighting in these major world wars for America. People were coming back and they were not seeing that being treated like full Americans. So they started organizing, and that's how we came about with LULAC out of Texas. So fast forward to 2006, I formed the first gay LULAC chapter in Dallas, Texas. And that's where I started becoming a leader in the Latino community, which was very empowering, because I had been one in the gay community, but now in a different community where I was kind of like unsure of myself, because my Spanish I'm third generation Latino on this side of the border. My Spanish is shaky at best. So it was great to be embraced by all these Latinos who knew when I showed up to work, volunteer, and get things done. Put a gay man in charge of something, it'll be organized and it's going to be done on time. So they love that. And the fact that I had some bona fides, because the same people that were running LULAC were also switched hats, and they were Tejano Democrats. So I came with that cred as well, that I helped half of those people that are Latino and elected get into that office. So fast forward, because of my activism, the Obama administration, I fell under the radar. I raised some money for them while I was in Texas, and they were like, do you want to come to DC and work for Obama? And I'm like, yes. And it was the tail end of his first administration. Everybody was telling me he was not going to get reelected. And they said, you should stay here because he's not going to get reelected. I said, no, this is a historic presidency. He's going to get reelected, and I'm going to go serve in his first and second term. So I came to DC, fell in love with this beautiful area, the Mid-Atlantic region. I get to finally have 4 seasons that I was promised when I opened books and I heard about our 4 seasons. In Texas, you only get 1, dry, hot, and maybe 2 weeks of winter. I love this area. I love the people. I can't wait to see more of Maryland and Virginia. Here, we have 7 councils in the DC area. And here, because we're not always under attack, by our city and state governments, I get to concentrate on issues that are important to Latinos, like poverty, access to education, helping immigrants with resources. I get the luxury of being able to concentrate solely on that and not having to worry about Eleanor Holmes doing something to hurt my people. In fact, she is an elected official who I serve on her. She has a Latinx board of leaders, and I get to serve in that board. And I get to remind her that, yes, thank you for being a champion of temporary protective status for Central American immigrants that have been here for decades, and they still need that status because stuff is not right back home for them to go home. And she's a champion of comprehensive immigration reform and protection for the dreamers. So I get to have those conversations at the federal level with her, and I get to have conversations at the city level with Muriel Bowser's offices to ensure that Latinos are getting a fair shake, access to COVID vaccines. Whenever programs are being dealt out in budgets, I get to work in tangent with other Latino serving organizations to say, hey, how can we support you to go get that grant? So that's the work I do in DC. I also mentor kids. That's one thing I wish I would have done at an earlier age. Mentoring kids at the high school level has been my joy. I've never got to have kids growing up because it was illegal for me to get married. And it was just, I was never going to be able to raise kids alone. But now I get to at least mentor kids, and it fills that void of not having children and seeing them develop into wonderful adults. So I enjoy doing mentoring in the high schools. Now, before I wrap this up, because I know I only have 7 minutes, one of the biggest joys is starting new councils in the area. And I got to do that like 3-4 years ago before the pandemic hit. I think it was 2018. I traveled to Cecil County with Patricia Provetina, who used to be the state director. And we went down there and we heard the stories about Latinos being followed by the police, not getting resources at the local clinics. And we heard a lot. We had a lot. I spoke, and I still speak to the young woman who started that council. She always emails back and forth with me when she needs resources, and it warms my heart that she's trying to restart that, because it went away like many councils during the pandemic. Some of them did not recover because people stopped meeting, and people are in crisis mode. They've lost their jobs. They have to reconnect and start surviving in a different manner. And we get it. LULAC gets it. But we're still trying to meet, and we're still trying to help each other out. And I'm so happy to hear that it looks like it's going to be assembling again. And I'm doing my best to start councils near my DC border in Silver Spring. And I forget the other city that's on the other side, but Bethesda, trying to get those councils going in those cities. That way Maryland can finally have a state director, because you need at least 2-3 councils before you can become a state director. So we're doing our best to try to get Maryland under the radar of LULAC and trying to get it moving. I've become friends with some of the state representatives. Gabriel Acevedo is an amazing individual who I talk to on a regular basis. He was an Obama appointee. He just got Anton's Law passed, which helps do a lot of good work to make sure that law enforcement is being checked on and making sure that people are treated fairly. And I'm very proud of him because he's so young. And he has so much potential. And he comes from labor. He comes from organizing. He's an proud Afro-Latino. He's got a lot of hats and a lot of communities that he's touching. And I just hope he runs for president someday. I'm just so enamored with him. He's doing a lot of good work. And at this time, I'm going to go ahead and stop talking, because I want to hear what you want to know from me so I could answer those questions, because I don't know if I'm touching the subjects that you want me to talk about. So I'll take questions now. I think you're on mute.
Thank you. It'll do your heart wonders to know that LULAC has started back up, LULAC Cecil County. Their next meeting which will be their second meeting.
Oh, good.
I believe November 4th. Yeah,
Good.
so
That's
they're back
good
in
to hear.
the swing of things. They'll be happy to know that you talked about them. So we'll open up the Q&A period now. And we'll do a short, maybe 5-minute segment.
I think there's one that was typed in. Is there a LULAC chapter in Hartford County? Hartford County. No, not that I know of. There might be some that exist. The only ones that I know are Cecil County, and then there was one that was formed, and they did not tell me which county. They asked me to co-sign it, and I'm like, well, I'll co-sign it, but you kind of need to introduce me because we have to sponsor. You can't just create one. You got to reach out to your neighboring council that's the nearest to you and form some type of relationship. That way there's some help that if they ever need to, they could turn to an existing council, but I never got the county. So there's a possibility that there might be a second one in Maryland that's already in existence, but I just don't know the name of the county.
And Christopher, I'll send you information if you want to attend the next LULAC meeting here in Cecil County. I'll send you that information. If you just send an email to the Cecil Dems Club, I'll make sure you get that information. So let me ask you a question, Jessie.
Sure.
Under the Biden administration, are things different? Are you seeing any changes for the Dreamers? Because they have my heart.
Yeah. The Biden administration, let's just say there's breathing room. It's not a perfect world by any means for the Dreamers. And I cannot speak to that, what they're feeling, because I'm not a Dreamer. I'm friends with Dreamers, and at least what I've gathered is that they can finally breathe because they're not being under attack by a Department of Justice or a president that's trying to make them a scapegoat. In fact, this President Biden shows empathy towards his population. The only thing is that we're running out of patience. We need some type of status soon. Right now, it's when people say, are people mad in the gay rights community because of the Equality Act and immigration reform not being addressed yet because of this infrastructure bill? I go, they understand that this bill is huge and it's going to help out so many populations that even these organizations that are working on the Equality Act and immigration reform, they're lending support to try to pass this bill because they know that this bill is so big that it's going to help their communities. So everybody's eyes and attention and spotlight is on this infrastructure bill that's taking so much space. For those who have been through this before, it's sort of like when Obama tried to pass Affordable Care Act. I mean, it dominated his first couple of years. And this is what we're going through. And we understand that there's a process to it. But for the people that don't want to wait anymore, it's a struggle because they're still in limbo. And the only thing that we can do is say, while we have the House, the Senate, and the White House that are friendly to Dreamers, let's not lose hope. Let's make sure that next year that is priority number one. But let's try to get this larger bill through that's going to benefit so many communities and marginalized communities. And he's already shown to protect us. He's tried to do whatever he can to make sure that the ICE agents are, hold back, only go, start deporting people who are a threat to our society, not the moms and dads that are working, but the ones that have committed crimes. And let's try to alleviate the situations on the southwestern border, a more humane response. We see what he's doing. It's hard to tell someone that's suffering so much right now and anxiety to tell them to be patient. Those are not the words they want to hear right now.
I think David had his hands up if he wants to unmute himself, Eunice.
David?
Hi, can you hear me all right?
Yes, we hear you fine.
All right, sure. So you mentioned in the beginning that you were able to turn Dallas County from red to blue. One of the problems that we have here in Cecil County is, number one, the lack of recruiting candidates, and of course, translating that into winning elections. What tips can you give us to be able to recruit candidates for office, and more importantly, how to actually start flipping the seat from red to blue?
When I was president of the Stonewall Democrats, I had so many I had to fight. Usually you get volunteers to run for president and no one challenges you because it's such a small community. But we actually had a contested race. And the reason I got elected is we have a good organization. It's time to take it to the next level. And that next level included candidate training, precinct chair training, and getting out the vote training. So there was 3 lanes that I wanted to start forming, where we would take our regular members and start, okay, it's time for you to start running for office, start small, start school board, and then we're gonna work you up to maybe city hall, and then next state representative. You find those people who are just as passionate as you in your organization, and you get to mold them and create the next leader by being able to train them. And a lot of people who are already organizing in your organization either have the skills to be that next leader, or they know someone that they could bring in. My case, I used to be afraid of public speaking. I hated it. I was just, who's the secretary in your organization? I was that for like 5 years. I would write the speeches for the president, and I would cringe when he would forget crucial points that I had already typed up the night before, or he would mispronounce someone's name, or he would really misrepresent the sentence the way I needed him to deliver it. So I finally said, you know what? I'm doing all this work. I can be delivering these sentences. That's when I found my voice. I was on track to be a city councilman and eventually state representative, but then I took that Obama appointment and it got me out of that track. But by having these groups that you belong to, the Cecil County Democrats, this is where you get your leaders, and you invite them to be part of your organization, and you start training them and giving them responsibilities of being a board member, leading projects. And once they're successful at that, you can gauge if they're ready for the big time.
Awesome. Anybody else?
Okay, there was a question on the chat. Do you think that Democratic leadership has a better understanding of the importance of reaching out to voters of color throughout the year and not just at election time? They need to start showing face in our communities and hearing us out. The one thing I love about the Biden administration is that they're always engaging. They're inviting not just LULAC. They keep on having these round tables, and they usually go to the Indian Treaty Room that's in that it's located right by the White House. They have the White House and the old executive office building that's on the side where all the important meetings, it's still considered part of the White House, but it's where the vice president has his office. It is such an honor when folks get invited to that treaty room and they sit down and they experience what's going on in that building. They invited a lot of Latino organizations. They have like a meeting every quarter, and they make them feel heard. And I suspect they're doing that with every constituent group. And it's important to have that, and not just bring them out when they want to sell them something like they did with Trump. When we were invited to Trump's White House, because we're a nonpartisan organization, they invited our president. They wanted them to sign over something really quick and dirty without having a full conversation about why they were going to allow dreamers to become citizens, but they were going to strike out the lottery visas for people from Africa and Asia. In other words, they were going to pick what type of immigrant enters the United States. Having that quick conversation and waving dreamers in front of us, knowing how bad we want them to have citizenships, that's not a relationship to have. You need to have this long-term discussion, and that's what Biden is doing. The thing is that it just doesn't, we're never going to have stuff fast enough, but he's already proven himself with the child, that tax credit that he's given families. My God, that has pulled up a lot of families out of poverty and giving so much resources to families. I can't wait till the studies come out of how many children were able to eat on a regular basis. Poverty, child poverty. I want to know how we benefited by having all those tax breaks for those families. We're seeing that it's trickling down and it's helping our families. And I think it's just amazing. I in Virginia, it's an off-year election. The candidates are storming the whole state right now. So it's great to see that they're sending the first lady and all of the vice president and her spouse out there to communities, especially communities of color, because it's important. We cannot lose Virginia. We cannot go back in Virginia. And if we manage to maintain Virginia, that's going to send a strong signal for progressive communities, especially after that California win. We have another one. What can we do to help LULAC members and Latinx community feel safe and welcome in our county? I know locations that felt safe was an issue. Hispanic Heritage Month is a great concept. You should think when it's safe to meet up again, to have celebrations that cater to it. I know when the Dallas County Democratic Party, we just needed a reason to have a barbecue. We celebrated Labor Day to really appreciate our unions. We would have a fish fry. We would have, we would open the county office in our well, it's Texas. You get large locations where people just drive up, and we would have a celebration for every constituent group around Cinco de Mayo or Hispanic Heritage Month. There would be something where we would celebrate and try to give out awards to people in the community that have been doing well, recognizing, lifting them up, spotlight them, but also do stuff throughout the whole year. It's like right now I'm being slammed with Hispanic heritage speaking engagements. I had 3 today. But I was happy to do them because I never get the opportunity to talk about the good stuff that LULAC is doing. But every thing we're available throughout the whole year. Try to include us in all the organizational stuff that y'all are doing. If you're going to have a Veterans Day, make sure you have Latino representation. If you're going to have something for Martin Luther King Day, make sure Afro Latinos, if you have some in your group that are a part of that, recognize that. Just know that we are in every facet of American society. Just don't wait for Hispanic Heritage Month to spotlight us. We have a lot of powerful women that you can recognize during Women's History Month. Is there another question? We have been lacking comprehensive immigration for so long. I don't know if there's even a committee in DC, much less what the discussion might be. What can you share? All I can say is that comprehensive immigration reform is the one issue where I think every Democrat, even Joe Manchin and Sinema, it's something that they would lean towards because their states are basically dependent on immigrant labor. So it's something, it's like an issue that once we get to this issue, after we've already talked about the infrastructure, this is something that could be an easy fix, but while we still maintain the majorities. We just haven't gotten to that conversation yet. But there's even Republicans who are ready to settle this issue because guess what? Who do you think picks your crops? Who do you think we never went hungry in this country during the pandemic because slaughterhouses where you get your meat, your pig, your cows, your pigs, your chicken. Guess who works those? It's a lot of Latinos, a lot of Latino immigrants who have to go in these frigid conditions to slaughter meat. And that's the one population that was told not to go home. Because the worst thing that could have happened is if you showed up during the pandemic in March 2020, April 2020, and saw no meat available, this society would have gone crazy. They would have thought it was the end of the world because they couldn't feed themselves. We never ran out of food, but because of who? The Latino worker. When I had to go, I have a badge as a government worker. By day, I'm a government worker, and I had to go, get it fixed because I had just gotten hired by the USDA at the time. Within 3 weeks of me getting hired, we shut down the government. Working at the offices. When I walked from my apartment, because I live right downtown by the convention center, to the National Mall, it was dead. No one was out. In March 2020, it looked like, if you ever saw the movie Legend with Will Smith, when he walks down New York City and there's no one there, that's how it looked in Washington, D.C., the most important city next to New York City. No one was out there. I went to go to that office to get my card fixed because that's the only way I could access and work from home. On the way back, the only people that I saw were Latino workers at the Smithsonian, making sure that the grounds were kept and our symbol, Pride National Mall, remained beautiful. That's how invested they're in with this country, making it sure it does not fall down, it does not fall apart, that we still are able to eat, live comfortably, and have pride in our national monuments. So this speaks to everyone. Everyone's been there, and it's not Latinos. We're talking about people from Africa and Asia who are also in the same predicament, but we don't ever see them because they get erased like always. Yeah, so just know that this is an issue that it's going to tug at the heartstrings, and every Democrat's going to line up once we start talking about it, and even some Republicans are going to jump in because their states are in need of immigrant labor. They're needed labor, period. We have a labor shortage. So they're able to turn over and tell the farm owners, the ranchers, that we're going to get some legalization for your industry. It's just going to, they're just going to get, there could be assured re-election because that's an issue for them. Is there any more questions?
We'll take one more if there's any more questions, and then we'll let our speaker go. Anybody else? Jamie? Oh. All right then.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity. And I wish you the best of luck. I miss our Democratic group, being part of a Democratic group. There's plenty here in DC, but they're not meeting on the nights that I'm available, and I'm already got too much on my plate. So just know you guys are doing the Lord's work. Thank you for being those organizers that are not going to give up, and I cannot wait for your section of Maryland to turn blue. Hopefully, yes. District is going to make that happen. And when it does, I'll be celebrating over here with you guys, okay?
Thank you, Jessie. Thank you so much. Same to you. That was great.